you can go. But the immigration inspector will stamp in your passport, most likely the letters DS, which stands for duration of status, which means you can stay in the United States so long as you're a student. So long as you continue to study hard, go to your classes, take your exams, and do nothing to violate your status, you can stay there until your program is finished. A visitor going to the United States, maybe you're going to go visit a relative over the holidays or go to Disneyland or whatever, they enter with a different type of visa, a tourist visa, and the inspector in those cases will put a specific date by which somebody has to depart the United States. But students are a little different. Most cases you'll see a DS, which means so long as you are maintaining status, you're okay. If you have a question, and we will get to this a little later about maintaining your status, your first point of contact should be your school official, right? The designated school official for international students. Make those people your best friend. And if you have any questions, you go see them if you're concerned if you're maintaining your status at all, okay? Questions about what a visa is? Good. So before you go, there's a few things you can do to get ready. First of all, make sure your passport is valid, right? Hasn't expired. You should basically have at least 6 months of validity left on your passport, projecting, looking ahead. But if you're going to be there for 4, 5, 6 years, don't worry about it. So long as you have at least 6 months of validity now. Look at your visa, right? Make sure it's the right classification. If you don't know, ask us. If you're a student, it's going to basically be an F, maybe an M. If you're an exchange visitor, probably a J. Those are the 3 letters, F, M, J, right? Most of you are probably Fs. Make sure if it's your first visa that the institution that you're going to is listed correctly on your visa. If you're an exchange program, a J visa, make sure the program that you're participating in is correct. Okay. If something doesn't look right, ask us. If it's wrong, come and get it fixed before you go to the port of entry. Because if you have a problem at the port of entry, they may not let you enter the United States. You have to come all the way back to Ho Chi Minh City and get a new visa. You don't want to do that long airplane ride twice. Students, exchange visitors entering the United States for the first time may only be admitted up to 30 days prior. So don't try to enter the United States before 30 days. So if classes start August 15th, don't enter any earlier than July 15th. Okay? Makes sense. If you go in June, you probably won't get in. So it's really important when it comes to buying your tickets. Also, there's documents that you should carry with you on the airplane. Don't check everything into your bag that they put underneath the airplane, because then you won't have it when you go to inspection. So when you come into the United States, most airports around the world, international airports, right? You get off the plane, it seems like you walk forever. First thing you go through is immigration. That's the person, they're going to look at your passport, process your documents. Only then do you go and get your bags and go through customs. So if there's anything you need in immigration that's in your bags, you're not going to have it. So if it's important, make sure it's in the bag you take on the airplane, okay? Questions? What are some of the documents you should carry? Okay, hopefully not these many documents, but obviously your passport that's got your visa in it, your form, right, the I-20 if you're an F or an M, your DS-2019 if you're a J. Now remember the documents you had to bring in to get your visa? We wanted to see proof that you had financial ability to pay for your program and live in the United States. It's a good idea to bring those along. You don't have to bring everything, but if there's any question at the port of entry whether or not you have the financial means to pay and live in your program and live in the US, you want to have some evidence with you. Also, really important, make sure you have contact information for your designated school official or responsible officer for your program, right? Because if the inspector has a question, they're going to have to call somebody. It's really helpful if they know who to call. It's usually the person who has signed your form, by the way. So what happens at the port of entry? You'll see a nice friendly inspector down here and a sign saying, "Welcome to the US." Like any visitor entering the United States, they're going to ask, "Why are you here? Why are you coming to our beautiful country?" And they want to know where you're going. And sometimes you'll enter a port of entry, and I should say this, right? In the United States, wherever you land is where you're going to go through immigration and customs. Everything after that is a domestic flight internally. There's no more immigration control or customs control. So if you're going to Boston and you land in Los Angeles, you're going to do all your immigration and customs clearance procedures in Los Angeles. Then you're going to get on a domestic air flight and fly to Boston, even though it's another 5-6 hours. Okay? So just remember that. It's your first port of entry that you're going to do everything. So if you come in Los Angeles, I'm going to Boston. Why are you going to Boston? I'm going to study. I'm doing a degree in math, whatever it is. You're going to give him the passport, you're giving your I-20, and whatever other documentations he or she asks to see. Okay? It's a little technical, but if you're authorized at some point later, optical practical training, that's going to have to be reflected on your I-20 as well. Okay, that's going to be somebody coming back into the country. Once your inspection is complete, the officer will stamp your I-94, staple it to your passport, and they'll give you back your I-20 or DS 2019. Don't lose it. Okay, it's really important. Your passport and your form is really important. Now, all that information on your I-20 or DS 2019 is in our SEPES system, right? But keep that form. If you lose that form, go see who? School official. Yeah, right. Your best friend. Occasionally, right? So those have been there, right? Big long lines. You might wait for 20, 30 minutes to go through primary inspection. You get an inspector. They look at your documents. They're not exactly convinced that you have everything you need. What they're going to do is send you to secondary inspection. Now, don't get nervous. Don't worry. It's the idea of a secondary inspection just means that the inspector will have a little more time to go through your case. What they don't want to do is create a log jam, right? They don't want to back up the line any further with primary inspection. They want to get people through quickly. So secondary inspection is a different room. You go, you sit down, a bit like coming to the consulate, and then you'll be seen. There, the people will have a little more time to talk to you. That's likely where they'll want to contact the school or your program advisor and find out a little bit more about your program and your status. Okay? Again, that's why it's so important to have the information about your school official with you, right? And all the documents, the same sort of documents you took to your visa interview, have them with you, right? They wonder if you still have the means to pay for your tuition and your lodging. You have some documentation saying you do. If failure to provide documentation, and this is very rare, right? They'll say, we're very sorry, but you haven't qualified to be admitted to the United States. Okay, and then it's that long trip back to Vietnam. Doesn't mean that you can't go back and try again, you certainly can. But this means that you didn't come with enough documentation and evidence to show support that you're entering as a student or an exchange visitor. So make sure you have everything with you. In some cases, they'll say, it looks pretty good, but get back to us within 30 days with more confirmation. Right? And in those cases, go straight to your school official, your best friend, get all the information that you need, respond to our Department of Homeland Security within the 30 days, you get no problem. Okay? But for most of you, you're going to go right through, so don't worry about it. Questions? Good group. There was a couple, I think, that were continuing students. Remember, you have a multiple entry visa, right? So usually valid for 12 months. Maybe you want to go up to Canada. Maybe you want to go visit a family member in Costa Rica, come back for tests, and then you're going to re-enter the United States. That's totally fine. Just make sure that your I-20 or your DS 2019 is endorsed, meaning your school official, your best friend, has signed it, right? That tells the inspector at the port of entry that you're a continuing student when you come back. For returning students who have changed schools, so this probably doesn't apply to anyone here, maybe one or two people, but for F visas, if you had, let's say you went to the University of California, Berkeley, where I went, and you decided, oh, I'd rather go to Stanford. Bad decision. Let's say you wanted to do that. You can, so long as your visa is valid and it says Berkeley on it, you can still use that visa, even though you've changed schools, so long as you have an up-to-date I-20 showing that you've been admitted to Stanford and that the information is set as current. Okay? For J's, it's different. Your J always, the annotation on the J visa always has to reflect where you are and what program you're in. But for F's, we save you a little money that way. The visa is still valid. Questions? When do you have to get to school? Well, remember I said you can't enter any earlier than 30 days. Okay. You should report to your school by your program start date. Remember, on your form it tells you when you have to be there, right? Don't be late. In fact, if you look at your form and it's late, you're not going to make it on time, call who? Ask your school official, right? They can update SEVIS. In most cases, you can still travel, but ask for the recommendation. If they say that they're going to send you a new I-20, in some cases it would require you getting a new visa. Not usually. So long as the SEVIS record is up to date, you're usually okay. But the important thing is try to get the class on time. Make your reporting date. Not too early, not late. We suggest that you contact the school immediately after you enter the country, okay? That doesn't mean like the same day, right? You can go visit friends, you can see relatives, but as soon as possible, make contact with your school, letting them know you're in the United States. Okay, so what can you do besides study? I think I missed the presentation before me, but it sounded like there's a lot of things they told you, right? And being on a college campus in the United States or being part of a J program can be a lot of fun. College campuses are full of interesting activities and opportunities, and I hope you all take advantage of them. There are certain benefits that you can take advantage of as an F or an M student, and as a J. I should put J as well. Some of these include working, but I don't get excited, okay? I'm going to tell a little more about that. Getting a social security number, that's our national ID number, which allows people to work and pay taxes. Training after your program is completed, you've probably heard of optional practical training, and getting a driver's license. Anyone have a driver's license here? Who drives? Yeah? Okay. So probably not many of you are going to get driver's licenses. But if you're there long enough and you're inspired to learn how to drive, and you want to see our beautiful country, which is very typical for Americans to get in the car and go on a road trip, you in that status are authorized to go to your local Department of Motor Vehicles. In most cases, it's up to the state, and apply for a driver's license. It doesn't give you any additional benefits except to drive, but that might be something you can consider. If you're unsure about what you can and cannot do, who are you going to ask? Your best friend. Okay. So working in the U.S., with very few, and sorry this is the print small here, but with very few exceptions, the F students, right, that's most of you in this room, may not work off campus during your first year, okay? That's not, remember, to qualify for the visa that you got, you had to convince the consular officer who interviewed you that you had resources to pay for your entire first year of study, and including living expenses in the U.S., and that you had access to funds after that to pay for. So that's how you qualify for the visa. So no one in this room should need to work off campus that first year, right? Because if you do, then you shouldn't have gotten your visa, right? Because you proved otherwise. So keep that in mind. Now there are, and I'm not going to go into detail about this, you can go on to ICE, which is the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. They're another DHS agency which manages our SEVIS system. But there are different options for practical training, some paid, some not. There's curricular practical training, which takes place during your course. Optional practical training, which can be during your course of studies or after studies. There's a special practical training for those doing science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, what we call the STEM fields. For M students, so M's are the non-sort of academic students, they can do practical training, but only after they completed their studies. That's vocational studies. For both F and M, any off-campus employment must be related to your area of study and must be authorized prior to starting any work by the school official and by USCIS, okay? So there's a lot of steps that need to be completed before you can work. So if somebody says, hey, you know, there's a restaurant on campus, hey, do you mind, you can work on the weekends, all right? No, you can't, all right? Only if your school official says you can, your SEVIS record is updated, and you have permission from the USCIS, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, another agency of DHS, okay? And you have to have an employment authorization card in most cases. Now, you know how big the American government is. How quickly do you think that happens? Right? Not too quick. So Just remember, if somebody says, oh, come work for a weekend, it's okay, no biggie. No, you can't, right? There are opportunities for work, but only with the approval of your school official and only with permission of the Department of Homeland Security. So if you have questions about working, who are you going to ask? School official. Okay. So maintaining status. See this big warning sign? Okay. It's important, right? So this is where I should speak with my really scary voice, right? It's really important to maintain your status, all right? So that means you're doing everything you're supposed to do to keep your records up to date in our SEVIS database. Basically what that means is you're a full-time student, right? You're not skipping class, you haven't reduced your workload, you haven't started working without authorization, you haven't taken a long vacation without telling the school, right? All those things would violate your status, right? And when the school becomes aware that you violated your status, they're going to enter you into their system, and then what happens, right? Eventually you got to come back to Vietnam. And that's not a way you want to come back because it makes it very, very hard to return to the United States, right? So studying U.S. is a great opportunity, but it also means you have a responsibility to maintain your status, okay? Once you finish your program, you get your degrees. Students with an F visa, you have 60 days to depart the United States, right? So you have graduation, doesn't mean you have to get on the plane that night. No, you can get in your car with your driver's license and drive across the U.S. and have a last holiday, see your relatives, hang out with friends, do whatever you want to do, but you do have 60 days that you have to depart. Our J visa exchange visitors have 30 days from the program end date on their VS 2019. And if you're ever in doubt about what to do, when to leave, whether you can work, right? If you're doing something that might violate your status, who are you going to ask? Your designated school official, okay? Questions? Yes?
So I'll have two questions. First one, so for driver's license, do you have to be 18 to get it, or do you get it?
I like it. We got a future driver right here. Do you have a driver's license here?
No.
Do you drive one of the? Do you drive a scooter?
I would, no.
Yeah. Have you ever hit anybody on a scooter? So the United States is a federal system. How many states? Anybody know? 50, right? And there's the Puerto Rico, which is a Commonwealth, and others. Every state's like a little mini country. And there are certain things that they decide what the citizens of that state get to do. And it's the states that determine how old you have to be to drive and the rules for getting a driver's license. So it totally depends where you are in the country. But if it's something that you are interested in pursuing and have the time, you go to the Department of Motor Vehicles and you can find out wherever you are in whatever state you're in and find out what the requirements are. Your school can probably also give you some information.
Oh, and also, so if I was in the United States for 2 years and my visa would only allow me to stay for a year, and I come back here, can I still apply for one?
That's a great question, which I meant to talk about. Okay, so remember what I said, the visa, unlike Vietnam, where your visa is also the length of time you can be in the country, the United States, the visa has nothing to do with how long you can be in the country. The inspector at the port of entry will tell you how long you can be there. And for students, usually it's the duration of status. So your visa is likely only valid for 1 year. If you're there for 2 years and you don't leave the United States, don't worry, right? You're in status, it's okay. That's why you have that I-94, don't lose it, right? And if you're in doubt, you're gonna talk to the school official, right? If you decide you're gonna come back to Vietnam for TET and your visa is expired, can you leave the United States? Yeah, no problem, right? No problem. You don't need your American visa to enter your country, Vietnam, right? But you will need a new visa to go back. So if you know that you're coming back for the holidays and your visa will be expired and you need a new one, apply early, give yourself enough time to get a new visa to go back. And what we'll want to see is that I-20 for an F, or DS 2019, whatever it is, that shows that you're with a school official signature, showing us that you're a continuing student. And we will also often ask for transcripts. see how you're doing. But mostly make sure that you're a full-time student. Questions? Did everyone hear the questions? I'm sorry, I didn't repeat them. The first one was about driver's license. You can check with your states. The second one was, if your visa expires in the United States, what does that mean? And remember, you can stay in the United States so long as you're in status. If you have an expired visa and you leave the country, then you do need a new visa, and just make sure to apply with enough time to process the visa. Right now, we have a 2-month wait for an appointment, right? So apply early if you know you're going to be in that situation. Yes?
2 questions. Do students have to get their I-94 form all the time? If they do when they lost it, then what should they do? Second question is, if they lost their passport and the visa with the passport, what should the student do?
So the question was, do you have to always have your I-94? What if you lose it? And what if you lose your passport? Okay, so the I-94 is the document issued by the Customs and Border Security, right? TPP, protection. They will generally staple it to your passport, and that's where it should stay. You can always make a copy of it if you want, just to have as a backup. If for some reason you lose that, talk to your school official. They'll explain to you what you have to do. You have to reach out to USCIS for a new I-94 or proof of your duration of status. So, okay, especially if you're going to re-enter the country. If you lose your passport, then what do you do? What if you lose your Vietnamese passport? Where do you go?
Embassy.
Not to your school official.
Embassy.
Although you should let them know. You go to
Embassy?
your embassy or the nearest consulate, right? So you go to your embassy in Washington or your nearest Vietnamese consulate and say, I've lost my passport. They'll help you replace your passport. Then you got to work with your school to make sure that you have the documentation and to show that you're a current student, and you're going to work with the Department of Homeland Security to get a new I-94, or at least a record showing that you're in status.
Well, my question was, I lost the visa and the passport.
Well, if you lost the visa, then you're fine in the United States, just like if it expired. But the moment you leave the United States, you're going to have to get a new visa to go back in. Okay. How about, let's see here. How much time do I have for questions? Okay, about 10 minutes. Okay, so good question. She asked about our recent systems outage. Is everyone aware that we've had a problem? We tried to broadcast it in our website, on our Facebook page, and all over. It's a global problem, not just here in Ho Chi Minh City. It was a problem in Washington with the databases. That is now being repaired. We are issuing visas normally right now. So we hope, we're working day and night to catch up. So most people should, if they've been waiting for a while, be getting their passports and their visas. If you've already missed your reporting date, what I'd recommend you do is call your school right away and ask them. They're aware of the outage, the problems, and what they'll probably do is update your status record, but it should not be a problem to enter the United States. Yeah. But do apply. If you haven't applied yet, apply now, please, right? Because it is a long wait time. We will expedite to the best of our ability students and exchange visitors, but there's a lot more demand than we have people here to process visas, so don't wait till the last minute. Yes? Well, that's a great question. Okay, so the question is her sibling has come back to Vietnam, and she's going to go back as a student. And does she need to come in at all? That's a great question, actually, and I should have mentioned it. So we do have a visa renewal by mail program. So if you are renewing a visa in the same category that expired less than 4 years ago, and there's been no other changes, you haven't had any problems with immigration in the U.S. or anything like that, you can take advantage of our interview waiver program, meaning you submit your paper application and your fees by mail, and your passport will come back to you in usually 7 to 10 days. So yes, that's a possibility, and I would recommend that you use it. Occasionally, we do have to call people in because their eligibility is not clear, looking in the system and looking at the documentation. But that's a great way for most people to renew their visa. Let me go back. Anyone back? Don't want? No? Yes? Okay, so she asked, the visa has expired, they're still in the States, you're doing an internship or something. So there's certain things, I mean, if it's connected to your program and it's something that's allowable under an F category, like the optional practical training, which is like can be up to a year after your studies, then that's going to be listed in SEVIS and it will be on your I-20, and you'll have your form annotated by the school official. And then you'll use your same, if you're in the country, no big deal. If you have to leave, then you'll need to get a new F visa to re-enter the United States. If you're doing something that's not covered in the F category, something new, then you have to apply for an adjustment, a change of status with Homeland Security, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services directly. And that's a whole different process. And if you have questions, you're going to talk to your school official. Questions? Over here. Can you work in the second year of study? Who should you ask? In some cases, yes, on campus. Maybe in some extreme cases, off campus. But yeah, there are possibilities for working after your first year. But that's a question for your school official. They would have to approve it. They'd have to update your SEVIS record. And USCIS, our Homeland Security Office, has to approve it and give you the correct documentation before you would start. Yes? Good question. Can you renew your visa in the U.S.? No. Can't, sorry. Can't. Visas are issued overseas. We can't. I'm not a question. Oh, I'm getting, what? I have to stop. Okay. It's been a pleasure talking to everybody. I hope I was able to answer some questions. I hope you got some advice that you can use. Most importantly, really enjoy your time in the United States. Best of luck to all of you with your studies, and congratulations. Thank you.